Is it recording? Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us for Falmouth VIPS Money Talk session on the ABCs and D of personal finance. I'm Beth Underhill, the literacy program leader with Falmouth VIPS, and as you may or may not know, we've been providing financial education throughout the Falmouth public schools for many years. We have programs at every level, so that when the students leave the Falmouth schools, they've become familiar with certain themes, topics, concepts when it comes to managing money. Because although students may take very different paths in their lives with careers and personal lives, no one escapes the responsibility for dealing with their money. So that we feel that we can provide them a good foundation to build on. And this year, we were very excited to be able to expand our Money Talk series to the greater Falmouth community. We've had this on our radar for a number of years, so we're glad to finally be doing this today. I've been working in the world of personal finance throughout my career, and most recently developing workshops like this for companies who want to provide this type of information to their employees, because they know, like you're very busy with your jobs and home lives, that it's not always easy to find the time to learn this on your own. So sometimes it's helpful to take advantage of these opportunities where we guide you through some of these common themes. Today, we're going to walk through a fundamental but key concept to managing your money. And maybe these are things that you're doing currently, and that's great. So this is sort of a validation or reinforcement of that. For others, you may pick up on something that you didn't know or only faintly familiar with, so it's helpful to have someone walk through it. But we feel like the information presented today is a solid first step to staying involved and organized in your finances, which is really key to achieving that financial peace of mind that we all want. But this is also meant to be very interactive, so please ask questions as we go along. I'll talk about that in a second, how to do that. Actually, before I introduce Beth Thompson, our guest speaker, let me just go over those housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and we will post it to the Falmouth VIPS website probably early next week, so you can rewatch it or share it with someone. That'd be great. The slides as well will be available on the Falmouth VIPS website, or I would suggest if you'd like a copy of them, I can send those to you at the conclusion by just giving us your email in the chat box. And that's where the chat box, you can ask your questions. If you have a question during, please post it. I will monitor the chat box and then ask Beth to answer the question for the group. So again, if it's just something you want to reinforce, or slightly, maybe even a slightly different topic than what we're focusing on, feel free to do that. So without further ado, let me introduce Beth Thompson, who has volunteered to be our guest speaker. She spent her career in banking and personal finance world, and also serves as the treasurer for VIPS. But I will let her fill in the details about her background. So Beth, take it away.
Thank you, Beth. Again, welcome to the ABCs and D of personal finance. My name is Beth Thompson. I'm a certified trust and fiduciary advisor, as well as an accredited fiduciary investment manager. I'm honored to be on the Falmouth Volunteers in Public Schools Board and to serve as their treasurer. I also work at Cape Cod 5. I've been there for 24 years as a wealth management officer. So let's get started. What are the ABCs and Ds of managing your finances? And as Beth said, our objective is to cover familiar but important financial concepts that will keep you on the road to financial wellness. We will also provide resources along the way to help you, further. So the first one is assess your financial situation. So we will show you how to create a net worth statement and a monthly cash flow statement. By writing it down, you'll know where your money is going. You can track where you're spending your money and what's coming in. The next one is B, build savings. We will show you the importance of making an emergency fund and retirement savings a priority. So we'll show you how to save for now and how to save for later. The next one is controlling your credit. We will show you how to check your credit report and your credit scores and what makes up your credit score and why it's so important. D is to decrease debt. So we'll talk about some methods where you can decrease your debt and decrease your costs. So let's start. Our goal is to help you stay organized and to stay involved. We'll hopefully help you achieve financial stability. And again, the most important thing, peace of mind. So your net worth statement. If you can't measure it, you won't be able to manage it. So the importance of the net worth statement and cash flow is very important. And we hope that you will update this at least once a year. But let's look at an example of a net worth statement. So you want to track all of your assets and you want to write it all down. It's very important. Now, cash is not easy to track because it fluctuates, but we hope that you will do the best you can. Write down the monies that you have in checking accounts, money market accounts, savings accounts, and CDs. Next, we want you to look at your invested assets. So your 401k, 403b, maybe you have an E-Trade account, stocks and bonds, mutual funds. Maybe you have an individual retirement account or a Roth IRA. Maybe you have an annuity. You want to write that down. You want to write down the accumulated value. Maybe you have investment property. You want to write that down as well and track. And then we want you to look at your use assets. So your home, maybe a vacation home, boats, RVs, jewelry, things like that. Next, we want you to look at your liabilities. So short-term and long-term. Short-term being credit cards, short lines of credit, or tax liens. Long-term being your mortgage, home equity loans, heat loans, car loans, and student loans. And then in the end, you'll come up with your net worth. The goal is to grow this over time, while growing it by saving and investing while also paying down your debt. So on the income side or the asset side, you want to pay yourself first. So try to automate your savings wherever you can. We'll talk about this quite a bit during this presentation. Maybe you can have your a certain amount taken out of your paycheck before it even gets to you. Money goes into your savings account. And you also want to match your time horizon. If you're saving for a house, you don't want to put that into risky investments. If you're saving for college, maybe you do that over time. And you want to think about your risk tolerance. So we want you to be able to sleep at night. So a lot of people will put money into the stock market, but if it's keeping you up at night, is it really worth it? And then on the expense side, we'll talk about this further, but debt repayment, some methods on how to pay down that debt. And on the bottom here, you'll see some resources that can help you. And again, these slides will be available at a later date so that you don't have to feel like you have to write this down all at once.
So Beth, I was just going to add with pulling together the information for the net worth. I found I did some coaching in the past, and I think people, they obviously have accounts everywhere and they can have some sense of what's going on, but I think just putting it in one place all together is huge. It may almost seem silly or like, why bother? I kind of know I have all this stuff, but when you put it in a format like this, I think the impact is just that much greater as far as knowing exactly where you stand.
Yep, I totally agree, Beth. And I have seen over the years people who have had different jobs along the way. So they have 401ks here, there, and everywhere. And they, like you said, may feel like they know exactly what's going on, but by writing it all down, it just puts it all on one page and simplifies it for everybody. So next, we'll talk about the cash flow statement. And this can be one of the most daunting money management tasks to do, but it's the most empowering, because if you know where your money is going, you can figure out what's coming in, what's going out, and set up a plan to deal with either the surplus. So maybe you have extra money that you really didn't know, and you could put that away, or you could pay down debt. Or maybe you have a deficit that you've been dealing with month to month. And we can, if you get it all down, we can talk about where can we fix it? What can we change to make it so that you don't have that deficit? So let's look at an example. And again, these numbers are just examples. They are different for everybody. But first, you want to write down the income. So all of your income, your salary, maybe your self-employment income, your interest and dividends, any capital gains, or maybe you have an alimony coming in. But you also want to make sure you deduct the funds for taxes. So federal, state, Social Security, and also hopefully you're having money taken out directly from your paycheck to your savings account. So you want to deduct that as well. So that will show you your monthly net income. Next, we want you to record your expenses. So there are different kinds. So fixed expenses, mostly your mortgage, the expenses that are pretty much the same month to month. Insurance premiums, property taxes, maybe childcare or tuition payments. And then you have the variable expenses. So your utilities, your groceries, maybe clothing, or you're going to the salon to get your hair cut, and then home maintenance and repairs, things that vary month to month. And then you have your discretionary. And this honestly can be the toughest one, because we want you to write it all down, and we want you to be honest with yourself. That's going to make this work for you. A cash flow statement only works if you're putting everything down. We know it's hard to track going out to dinner, maybe a gym membership, fees, maybe donations. But again, for this to work, you really want to be honest with yourself. So then you end up with your net monthly cash flow. So when you get to this figure, you can figure out if you have extra money to put away into your savings account or to pay down some of your debt. The goal, of course, is for your income to be greater than your expenses and that you have a surplus. And again, with that surplus, hopefully, you can either pay down your debt, which we'll talk about, or put more money towards savings. So on the income side, find the money to save. Maybe each year you get a very large tax refund. Well, maybe that's great, but maybe instead of getting the tax refund, you change your W-4 deductions, and that way your paycheck is a little bit higher each month and you can automate that savings. And below we have some resources for you again. But on the expense side, let's think about what can you change. So think about your discretionary expenses. Maybe go out to eat one day less a month, and that's money that you can put away. Reduce those impulse purchases, which we all have, of course. But I think the big one here is to evaluate your cable and wireless. I've heard a lot of people talking about cutting the cord and that they've been very successful. So I'm sure you're all aware, monthly cable bills seem to go up and up and up. So a lot of people have been successful with finding other means to stream and to get their wireless.
I think I was actually on the Facebook page, Fabulous Falmouth, when I scrolled through that, and there was a long discussion among people about cutting, reducing their cable. And it was a great resource for me because I've been thinking, okay, it's time for me to do that. And, so sometimes in the oddest places, you'll find what people are doing and can save lots of money.
Significant amount of money. So yeah, there are great resources out there. And then the last one I would just say, assess your insurance coverage, because that changes over time. Maybe you have term insurance now because you have young kids, but as time goes on, you may not need that anymore. So it's a good idea to meet with your insurance provider and see maybe things can be reduced. And that's it for the assess.
I'll just echo a couple of comments, Beth. One is about the feeling of empowerment. I felt like when I was coaching people, this was the scariest part, and usually why they reached out to me is they just had this unsettling feeling that something was off. Maybe they were spending too much, but sometimes doing it themselves was troublesome or whatever. So, but boy, when you go through this exercise, I think on the other side, it's so empowering because now you can put together a plan when you know where your starting point is.
Exactly.
So this is going to require some dedication of time to go through, but don't try to accomplish it necessarily all in a day, take it in pieces, but just pull yourself through it. Because even if it is not a great situation, when at least you have someplace to start from. So
I agree. And I also think you and your partner should do it together, because there might be things that you didn't know he or she was spending, they didn't know you were spending. So I think to really get it right is to sit down and spend some time with it. And again, there are resources out there and samples that you can use to help you. Thank you, Beth. So moving on, we're going to look at building your savings. So 2 financial goals that every household should have is an saving for emergencies as well as retirement. So we would like you to have an emergency fund. We know emergencies come up. The car breaks down, the refrigerator is on the fritz and needs to be replaced or fixed. You know, unexpected things happen every day. So you want to have at least 3 to 6 months of fixed and variable expenses available in a savings account. And you want to keep it safe and liquid, because you're going to need to get to it quickly when these emergencies come up. So you could have it in a savings account, maybe a CD, less than a year. Rates aren't great right now, but that's really, with an emergency fund, that's not the point. The point is to have funds available when emergencies come up. Next, you should be building your retirement savings. You should start this early. You should set it up to have 15 to 25% of your pay put aside for retirement. So that time when you are no longer getting that paycheck, you want to have funds set aside to be working for you while you're working. So you want to have it invested for income and for growth. It should be a longer term horizon. You should be thinking about employer-based plans. So 401k, 403b. You can also invest on your own in a retirement account, traditional, or a Roth. Maybe you're self-employed. You can put up to 25% of your pay away into a self-employed IRA. And again, here are some resources that can help you with that.
Beth, would you say the 15 to 25% goal, if I stated it, you know, 15, you can be at that lower end if you've been saving pretty much your whole career, and people who maybe save later, you're pushing that maybe 25%. And that's why there's such a range.
Yep, I would say absolutely. And also check with your employer to see if they have a matching plan. Many employers have that. So if you're putting away 5%, they can match. Maybe they match up to 3% or 4% or 5%. But I would say take full advantage of that, because it will add up over time.
And that's a good point, to include that match in that 15 to 25%.
Exactly. Yep. So let's move on to the C of the ABCs and D. This is controlling your credit. So having good credit can save you thousands over your lifetime by giving you access to great rates whenever you do need to take a loan. So it's important to know what goes into the credit score, your credit score, and your credit report. So there are 3 credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Let's take a look at what makes up your credit score. Excuse me. So 35% of your credit score is based on timely payments. So we can't stress this enough, to make your payments on time. And if it can only be the minimum, that's okay. You want to try to pay more, but at least to pay the minimum. Next is credit utilization. So 30% of your score is based on credit utilization. And credit utilization is the ratio of your credit limit compared to what you owe on your credit card. So for example, let's say you have a credit limit of $31,300. Your account balance is $4,100. Your rate, so 4,100 divided by 31,300, is 13%. The goal is to be less than 30.
And I think that stands, I'm sorry, just
Go
for
ahead.
individual cards, you want to be under 30. And then if you look at all your cards together, right? I think
Yep.
that kind of figures into the algorithm. So.
Yep, absolutely. Next is the length of credit history. How long have you had it? Obviously, the longer you've had credit history, the better. Then it looks at credit mix. So 10% of your score is made up of credit mix between fixed loans, mortgages, compared to variable. So credit cards, lines of credit, that type of thing. And lastly, 10% is made up of new credit. So, here are some resources for you. Again, and next we're going to talk about your credit score more. So the two credit scores that are used are FICO and Vantage Score. They're both pretty similar, except they have their own algorithms. Is that right, Beth?
Right, yep. And different institutions, whether it's a mortgage versus auto, they may differ, but albeit they're pretty similar.
Pretty similar. So obviously, your credit score is its 3-digit numbers that tells lenders how likely you are to repay. So the higher, the better. And here are some ranges. This right here, the 720 to 850 is the excellent range, which is definitely where you want to be. So next, we'll show you how you can check your report and your scores. So here, the goal really is to check your credit report about every 4 months. And you should check the different agencies. So you don't always want to check Experian. You want to check around because different companies report to different agencies. You will need to provide some of your information so that they can identify you. And you want to make sure you get a free credit report. You should not have to be charged for a credit report. So you'll go to their website, they'll ask for more information. And then what you want to do, the goal is to check for accuracy. There has been, I'm sure you've all heard, this identity fraud everywhere. And the first place you can check to make sure that somebody hasn't stolen your identity is your credit report. You can see if there's been things that have falsely been claimed as yours, and you want to take the time to correct those because it will take time. So it's important to check like every few months so that you are ahead of it.
And I think also with the credit report, it's again one of those emotional barriers like the cash flow statement. Sometimes people know they aren't doing well with their credit and they're afraid to look and they don't want to do it. I mean, again, but that will paralyze you, keep you from correcting any situation. So, it's really important to do this regularly. That's what we mean by staying involved. And checking one every 4 months, right, on a rotating basis, you get that free one from each agency for a year. So.
And again, you can act quickly if there are mistakes on it. So next, how to check your credit score. So sometimes financial institutions will check it for you. Other times you might have to apply for credit before they'll do that. So another way to do it is to go to Credit Karma. This is something you can set up an account with Credit Karma. It's completely free, and they will let you know your credit score. But what they also do is they track your credit. So if something changes, if an account was paid off or an account was opened, you will get an email saying, did you do this? And if not, then you can get your credit report and find out what's going on. So it's a great way to stay in tune with your credit score. So of course, your score will fluctuate. It tends to go down faster than it comes up. But again, these are the things we talked about: the payment history, utilization ratio, credit history, your mix, and new credit. You certainly apply for credit, but just be careful. It might tempt you to spend, especially when you're at a store and they say, oh, you could save 10% if you apply for one of our credit cards. But be careful because those can add up. So again, on the bottom here, we have some resources.
Yeah, and I think the credit counseling, if that's a nonprofit organization, if you are in some, serious sort of situation with your credit and debt, it's a good resource that
absolutely,
can walk you through that. Because again, this can be a whole area that's very daunting for people.
And there are a lot of reasons why somebody could have bad credit. Somebody got unemployed or divorced. There's a lot of reasons that it happens. And, I think we're just trying to say, just stay on top of it. And like Beth said, stay involved.
I think that's a great point. I think it is like if you have an illness, you lose a job, those are the most common reasons, nothing, really within your control. So
exactly. So there are resources out there that can help. So next, we'll talk about the D and how to decrease debt. So there are some strategies for repayment. The goal, obviously, is to pay down debt as cheaply, meaning your lowest interest rate, and or as quickly, meaning the shortest term as possible. So the first strategy is the snowball strategy. So this would be when you add additional savings to a card or a credit card or a loan with the smallest balance. And then once you pay that off entirely and close it out, you can apply that same amount that you were putting towards the next smallest balance. And what this does is it builds momentum because you'll actually see progress happening. The next strategy is the avalanche strategy. So this is the highest to lowest interest rate. So you want to pay off those high interest cards the fastest. So you take additional savings, now that you know what that is from your cash flow statement, and you start paying off the highest interest rate. And then again, once you pay that card off or that loan off, you can move on to take that same amount and move on to the next highest. And lastly, there's the snowflake. And this is to pay off the lower credit utilization rate. So you want to get your utilization rate down. So pay off the high utilization rate cards, the ones that have the highest balances, and get that paid down. And what this does is it will improve your credit score over time.
So Beth, would you say that might, depending on what your situation is, maybe you're looking to get a loan in the near term, so the snowflake might make sense if you need a better utilization rate. So that's someone, whether it's the person you're getting the mortgage through or someone can kind of counsel you on.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And any of these will work. It really depends on what your goal is. Yep. Is it to build the momentum and get the loans paid off? Is it to save the most money by paying off those higher interest rates? It's individual for everybody. And then there are some other strategies too. So you could refinance. Loan rates, especially mortgage rates, are very low right now. So maybe you want to refinance your mortgage because you can get a lower rate and then have a lower payment amount. The only thing that we would caution you on is not to extend the term. So let's say you have a 30-year mortgage, you've been paying it for 10 years, and a 30-year mortgage fixed rate is quite low, lower than what you're paying. You don't want to go back and do another 30-year loan because then you're extending it another 10 years. So maybe you look at a 20-year loan or a 15-year loan, and that way you can pay it off faster. Another strategy could be to do a balance transfer on credit cards. I think we all get those in the mail saying, hey, we'll give you a 0% loan for 6 months if you transfer your balances over to us. Those can work, definitely. But you just want to be careful about what the rate is going to change to after that teaser time, because it could be higher than what you're paying now. There's also debt consolidation. Again, you can work with a company that will pay off all your loans, and maybe you'll have just one loan, but you just want to be careful that you're not extending the term again. And then there are debt management plans. As Beth had mentioned, there's some nonprofit ones, but there are other ones out there that can help, but they might have high fees. So you want to be careful of that. And then again, we have some great resources on how to pay down, strategies on how to pay down your debt.
So I think it might just be a good time to just emphasize that, you really can't do this page if you don't go through the cash flow.
Agreed.
Right? So it's really hard to attack this without doing that first to figure out where you can squeeze some savings out of. So
exactly. And to find out where your money is going. Exactly. It's very important to go in, with an open mind and say, this is important for me to do. It's a priority. Make it a priority for you, and the plan will come together. And if you need to reach out for help, then you can do that. But it is important to do. And with that, Beth, I would ask, are there any questions that I can answer for anybody?
Oh, I do. Do you recommend paying it off and closing the account, or leaving account empty but inactive so it doesn't impact the credit score?
That's a very good question. And I would say that is really personal to each person. It depends on how many cards and loans you have out there. So if you've paid down a credit card, it could affect your score if you close it, if you don't have a lot of other credit. But if you do have a lot of other cards and loans, it could help your score by closing it, because your utilization rate will go down, if that makes sense.
And probably part of the consideration would be if you're expecting to go for a loan in the near future, you want to be very careful about doing that until you talk to someone.
Exactly.
Right, because like you said, it could negatively impact, even though over the long term, it will improve your score, but maybe for just this period of time, it might make sense to hold on to it.
Exactly. Yep. As long as you don't start using it again.
Right. Right. So,
great. Well, thank you all very much. I enjoyed this opportunity to talk to you about your personal finances and how to get control of it.
And thank you, Beth, for volunteering to do this. It's great to have experts from the community and come out and share their knowledge, have an opportunity for people to ask questions, because like we know from careers in personal finance, it takes years to really internalize and understand the stuff and build your confidence. So again, we appreciate everyone coming today, hopefully increasing your knowledge slightly, or came away with some tidbit, or again, just reinforcing something you knew, and it's good to hear someone else tell you you're on the right track. So we hope to do more of these in the future. Certainly, as I said, this recording will be on the Falmouth VIPS website to look at again, share with others, and then if you'd like us to send you a PDF copy of these slides, just leave your email in the chat box, and we'll get that out to you within the next day or so. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.